Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to this morning's meeting of Southwark Council's Cabinet. I'm Councillor Kieran Williams, Leader of the Council. I'm going to start by just asking the members of the Cabinet to introduce themselves. I'm going to start at this end with James.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Councillor Nakash, and I'm the Cabinet Member for Clean Air, Streets and Waste.
Hi, I'm Councillor Sarah King, and I'm the Cabinet Member for Council Homes.
Hi everyone, I'm Councillor Portia Mwanganjay, Cabinet Member for Leisure Parks and Young People.
Morning everyone, I'm Councillor Stephanie Cryan, Cabinet Member for Equalities, Democracy and Finance.
Okay, good morning everyone. I'm Councillor Jasmine Ali, Deputy Leader and Cabinet Lead for Children, Education and Refugees.
Good morning everyone, my name's Natasha Ennin. I'm the Cabinet Member for Community Safety and Neighbourhoods.
Good morning everyone, I'm Councillor Helen Dennis. I'm the Cabinet Member for New Homes and Sustainable Development.
And we have apologies this morning from Councillor John Batterton, and Councillor Makoto will be joining us very shortly. Well, I first want to start by saying thank you very much to Pembroke House and the Walworth Living Room for hosting us today. I see Mike loiter in the back, and I know some of the rest of the team are here as well. It feels like quite a full circle moment for me. So I became leader of the council in the middle of the pandemic when we were doing a huge amount of work with community organisations across the borough, not least Pembroke House, who did amazing work with a whole scope of, I think, thousands of volunteers in the end, Mike, thousands of volunteers to get support to people in their homes when they needed it. Many of you will know that I will be standing down next month. This isn't my final cabinet meeting, so I won't do the full pitch just now, speech just now, but it is the penultimate one. It's nice to be back here in a place that really, I think, represents what is fantastic about our community in Southwark, the ability of people to come together across this hugely diverse community we have to get the practical help and support people need to them in their lives, and to think about how do we improve people's life chances. So I very much commend, if you don't know Pembroke House, have a chat with the team here, I hope you all do, have a chat with people about how the Walworth Living Room itself works, and the work that's being done here. So I encourage people to do that. The second thing I want to say at the beginning is I'm conscious that we have a number of people here who want to be here for the items on school closures today. So I'm just going to bring those slightly higher up the agenda so we can come to those earlier. I don't want to, obviously want to give you the chance to be here for those discussions as quickly as we can get to them. A couple of things I'll go through first, but I will bring them up the agenda a little bit. I'll let Evelyn catch her breath and then let her introduce herself in a second. While I do that, we have two items of urgent business today, don't we? So, and they are the ones I just mentioned. So item 12 is the consideration of proposals to close Sharman Primary School, and item 13 is the consideration of proposals to close St Mary Magdalene Primary School. They're the only ones that are urgent today. Do we have any items in closed business? I don't think we do. No. No items in closed business today other than agreeing some minutes from a previous closed session. Do any Cabinet members have any disclosures of interest or dispensations that they need to make today? Sarah.
Thank you. I don't have an interest in agenda item 14, which is the appropriation of land at Greendale, but I've been advised that I could have perceived bias, so I'll step out for the discussion and decision on that agenda item.
Okay, thank you very much. That's the one about Dulwich Hamlet Club, which we will come to very shortly. Are people happy to agree the minutes of the meeting that we had on the 11th of March as accurate? Agreed? Agreed. Thank you very much. We haven't received any public questions today, but we do have one deputation request. So Ben, are you here somewhere? Yes, hi Ben. Do come forwards and we'll take your deputation. So Ben is from Dulwich Hamlet FC and is here to talk about the football club. So if you want to come forward, and if you'd like to both introduce yourselves first, and then you will have up to 5 minutes between you to make your deputation, and we'll have some discussion with Cabinet after that. But introductions first. If you just press the green button, I think it is on the microphone, assuming it's the same as mine, you'll be able to speak. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks. Ben Clasper, Chair of Dulwich Hamlet Football Club.
Matt T. I'm Ben's special advisor on matters stadium related.
Over to you.
Thanks. Kieran, members of the Cabinet, thank you for having this important move on your agenda today. I
thought I'd have slightly more time to prepare, being item 14, but let's dive in. And agreeing to have a deputation from the football club. I'm Ben Clasper, the chairman of Dulwich Hamlet Football Club. So I want to start by expressing our thanks to councillors and officers who have worked hard to clear the way for the building of the new stadium. The decision Cabinet is recommended to take today, along with the granting of the build licence, will mean that the final obstacles are removed and we can begin building. Before I go on to speak about the benefits that the new stadium will bring the community, I'd like to take Cabinet back to 2018 when the club was evicted from Champion Hill. What we saw then was the greatest expression of universal support for the club as a much-loved part of its community across this and neighbouring boroughs. I would have thanked the many councillors that pledged their support at that time, and I also want to thank the politicians at Westminster and City Hall for their unstinting support when we were at risk of losing the club after 125 years in East Dulwich. As Lisa Nandy said in her first speech as DCMS Secretary, from the England football team to our grassroots coaches, you have been a light on the hill, Champion Hill in our case, in times of darkness. That support from the community has been maintained since our return to Champion Hill after winning promotion in 2018. We continue to get capacity crowds at Champion Hill, despite even the relegation disappointment 2 years ago. I'm sometimes asked why we need a new ground. Well, the current ground, as many members will remember, was built as part of the Sainsbury's development. It was in the early 90s. It was by developers who had no experience or even interest in stadium design. It's rapidly become unfit for purpose. And the plumbing, quite frankly, is in a state of near collapse. The current ground is also increasingly difficult to maintain in line with the new stadium regulations. The football club recently completed the 2024-25 season and welcomed 70,000 people through the turnstiles for the third consecutive year, which for context is more than 3 times what any other club at this level would see. On 13 occasions, unfortunately, we've had to lock the gates to people in the community so they weren't able to attend. And on 33 occasions, we've had to take tickets off sale in the run-up because the demand exceeds the capacity of the current ground. These repeated sellouts are starting to cause negativity in our community. They drive people away from the game, and actually they drive people away from SE22 on weekends who would rather go elsewhere than risk the disappointment of being turned away. Appropriating the land to allow the development of the new stadium to commence is the only path to allowing everyone in Southwark to attend every sporting event they want to be present at. So a few facts to bring you up to date since we returned to Champion Hill in 2018. We've had over 350,000 people through the gates, which for a non-league football club at our tier is unprecedented. We've employed over 200 local people. Half of them were under 21 when they started. A third of them were under 18 when they started, still school, and we still pay them all London living wage, and we've put about £2 million in their pockets over the last few years. We've contributed over £3 million in business rates and taxes to the economy as well. We've become a key part of the local economy for businesses. They all tell us that the presence of the club on a Saturday makes an enormous difference to footfall on Lordship Lane and to their businesses. Since 2018, we've added 2 women's teams to the clubs, drawing crowds of several hundred to every game, and we're now adding a youth team to our men's team, supported by a £100,000 renovation of the playing fields around the land we're talking about, owned by St Saviour's and St Olave's, and that's money that the club has fully funded itself. It's brought back to life 3 pitches that are now used for the benefit of local schools and local youth clubs. The new stadium residential development will deliver housing, growth and health benefits, not just with the 219 units, including 38% affordable housing, but with new and bigger sports facilities. It will increase the number of people who can attend and participate in sports events in the borough. When Cabinet backs the recommendation of the paper, it will enable the continuation of further development of a historical local football club that has a deep community roots stretching back to 1893, including being a 1948 Olympic venue. Since the planning application was approved, the club has demonstrated that it is a responsible and committed pair of hands when entrusted with open land in the area and delivers on the expectation that we will increase sporting provision and community use. We look to grow that responsible stewardship with a new stadium that the community and the council can be proud of.
Thank you very much. As someone who lives not that far from the club, I know how loud the cheers are when you score, and that is quite a phenomenal record, actually, of work with the community. I know, as you say, local businesses hugely value the footfall that comes from the club, but I also know that the work you do, giving young people in our borough the opportunity to get involved in sport, sometimes progress in sport, sometimes just seek inspiration for the rest of their life, is really vital. Can I just open up? Are there any questions that Cabinet members would like to ask? And I should say, I will come to the related Cabinet item next after this, so we can, and Helen, that would be, but yes, questions.
Thanks very much for your deputation. Yeah, as Kieran said, obviously we're going to be deciding on the recommendation in the report shortly. One of the things that I know the club is seeking to bring forward and is in the planning consent is also a multifunctional kind of recreational space. Obviously the AstroTurf at the moment, as noted in the report, has become really dilapidated, but there is still community demands for a kind of kickabout space. And I just wondered if you could say a little bit more about that and how you plan to involve the community in managing that space going forward.
Yeah, so one of the big things that changed during the application process was that there was discussion at the start as to whether the council would be involved in the operation of the stadium or half the stadium, which dates back to the exclusive arrangement you have with the fitness provider. Over time that's changed. The club will now be responsible for the operation of the entire stadium site. That would include the management of the Muga that's proposed on the site. The design of the Muga is based around the actual use of the AstroTurf today. If you walk past it, and I do this every day, you will find groups of 4 or 5 kids pretty much every day, you know, kicking the ball around and having a good time. So the design of that space is for them. And it will be open. The stadium is fully staffed now, so we would intend to have the Muga available at all times as well.
Thank you. Any other questions people would like to ask? No, well, in that case, can I just say thank you very much for coming and giving your deputation today. We're going to go on to the related Cabinet decision that we've got to make in a second, but I just want to put on record my thanks to the club for the work you do and the values you brought to the football as well. It's been fantastic to see. Thank you.
Thanks very much.
So I'm going to go on to item, which one is it? It's item 14 now, and Councillor King will step away, as she said earlier on. And I'm going to hand over to Councillor Dennis to introduce this one.
Excellent, thank you very much. And I've got the officers who've been involved in this process coming forward as well. Really, this is a technical report about appropriation of lands, which includes the current AstroTurf, essentially, for development purposes, which would enable the planning consent to be implemented, and for the plans for a new stadium, new homes, and the new kickabout space that you've just heard about as well, to move forward and progress. Obviously, all the detail is set out in the report. I'll hand over to the officers, to Matt, Neil and Clive, in case there's anything further that they would like to add.
Nothing further, Chair. Thank you.
Any questions on this report? I know obviously this has been a long time in the coming, but it'd just be helpful for us to know, and I think perhaps I'll direct this to the officers much then, I think, how do we make sure we've got the right assurances in here that we will get the best outcomes as a result for this for our residents in the borough?
Chair, so it's worth noting that this report in and of itself is an administrative step around the designation of land only, but clearly it marks the step of a longer process which will result in ultimately facilitating the redevelopment of this site and the adjoining stadium to deliver the benefits that the club has spoken about earlier on. So in and of itself, this step is merely the start of that process. As noted in your report, there will be future decisions that the Cabinet will be asked to make, which will cover issues around the land ownership, which is on your forward plan for a Cabinet decision in October of this year. And in parallel to that process, there will also be decisions that the Councillors' Planning Authority will need to make with regards to community use of the pitch, which is a planning obligation already within the existing consent. So there are processes in place that will run in parallel. This marks the start of that period.
Thank you. Helen, is there anything you would like to add on this one?
No, I don't think so. Obviously, the details in terms of the community benefit, I mean, you've heard about the contribution that the club is making to the community and its phenomenal support that it has locally and beyond. The detail, obviously, around that, and a lot of the debates took place around the planning permission before it went to planning committee. obviously we've been waiting quite some time to be in a place to move forward with implementation. So this is positive news, because we're getting to a place now where we're moving forward with the administrative process from the council's point of view, and really look forward to see the build out of the new stadium starting to take place. But evidently there will also be conditions around the planning permission, around construction management and those kinds of things which the club will be required to implement to ensure that the local community, that the disruption that there is around, a large kind of planning development, etc., is mitigated, and that they are required to work with the community every step of the way.
Thank you very much. Well, with those things said, can I take us on to agree the 2 recommendations in this report? So there are just recommendations 1 and 2 for us to agree. Can we agree those? Agreed? Agreed. Thank you very much. And I'm very glad to have been done. Another administrative step, an important one in securing the future of the club, as we've long been working to do. And thank you to the members of the club for coming along. So I shall take us now on to the 2 items about school closures, proposed closures, which order are they in? Charlotte Sharman first?
I think Charlotte Sharman is first.
Okay, so we're going to start with Charlotte Sharman first, and I'm going to ask Councillor Jasmine Ali to introduce this one in a second. Before she does, I just want to say, really importantly, that one of the challenges that we face in Southwark, and indeed the rest of the country faces, actually, indeed most of the rest of the developed world, is a falling birth rate and a reducing number of children, and particularly for us at the moment, young children in the borough. So we have been working very hard doing that difficult task of working out, well, how do you deal with that when we have, in fact, in Southwark got these amazing schools across the whole borough. Where are we at now? 95% good or outstanding? Yeah, 96% good or outstanding schools.
97.
So there's 97. Oh, see.
Any advance?
So there hasn't been easy options, I think, is the one important thing to say on this. And so we appreciate it's a really difficult process. The 2 decisions that we have got to contemplate this morning as Cabinet, I know are very difficult ones for people who are very attached to their school, as I am to my children's school. So we understand that they're very sensitive decisions and difficult ones to work through. So I just want to say that to start with, and then hand over to Councillor Ali and then Alistair to introduce this report.
Okay, thank you very much for that, Leader. I think that's a very helpful introduction. I just wanted to check, we've got a number of people from schools in the audience. Is there anyone from Charlotte Sharman School here? Oh, come in. It's a good job I double-checked. I didn't see you at the beginning. Okay, did you just want to... it's our Chair of Governors.
Yes, I'm Chair of Governors of Charlotte Sharman Primary School.
I'm Rihanna Goosh. I'm from Michael Faraday, but I've been consultant and supporting my Charlotte Sharman through this process.
Brilliant.
Well, thank you very much for both coming. So, did you say Mike?
David.
David, sorry, David, didn't quite catch that. So yeah, when I invite you to speak, do use the microphone. You just have to press the green button, but we'll come back to that in a moment.
Okay, and obviously Alistair's here and probably needs no introduction, our Director of Children's Services. Okay, it is with heavy heart that I ask Cabinet to approve the closure of the much-loved Charlotte Sharman School. We know that education in Southwark has never been stronger, as we said, 97% good and outstanding. Yet this steep demographic change in the capital and beyond continues to present a real challenge. You called them out, but basically the falling birth rate by 40% is huge. And, that we've been grappling with this. Since 2018, we saw the trends coming through, but, we've had Brexit, the increased cost of living crisis, the impact that's had on affordability to live anywhere in London, in particular, Southwark. And, the pandemic, we saw that in itself contributed, that a lot of people thought that they could, hold a job down in the city and live wherever they wanted. So we did put together the Keeping Education Strong And, you know, it did come back to Cabinet in 2023 with a list of schools identified by the Council for pupil place reduction, amalgamation or closure. Charlotte Sharman was in discussion around that time with neighbouring school, St Jude's. But the amalgamation didn't work, and school staff were worried about the blending of the culture of Charlotte Sharman with Faith School. So that didn't work. So this meant that Charlotte Sharman continued to struggle financially. I want to say, you know, that it is, I mentioned it's a much-loved school, and it's had, you know, the campaign of all campaigns, a huge campaign, and then we can see that there are a lot of people in the audience. We've got Alex in the audience from the trade unions, who's consistently been putting forward, you know, ways in which we can keep the school open, and obviously we've got Maria, one of our own councillors, you know, from the St George's ward, who's been at the school regularly, you know, trying to find a way forward. Last year, I met with, Nicola Metcalfe and David Workman, who's here, you know, as a chair of governors. And they inherited, you know, something not of their own making. But they stepped up to the plate because they had a business plan and they tried to make the school work. So we were, you know, obviously impressed by this. And we basically got Alistair's team, you know, the education team went down to the school. The MP was interested, I know Cabinet was interested, and we were trying to do everything we could to keep the school going. Unfortunately, it just doesn't, the finance doesn't stack up, and it isn't viable to keep the school open. Last week, Alistair and I visited the school, and we met with the school staff and parents. We also, the day after, we met with the trade unions. We did learn something, because obviously you have this big consultation, you process it, and it's all in front of you. But it did feel that we learned, you know, from the face-to-face meetings at the end of the consultation, that actually, you know, drawn to the conclusion, that it did feel a little bit, you know, from what parents were saying, and certainly school staff, that the school, as a foundation school, felt that it was isolated. You know, and it's worth recognising that. So one of the things that we felt, I mean, a lot of the parents said, you know, look, what about, you've got all this support and everything, but what about families that don't live in Southwark? So we recognise that as something, they should get exactly the same support. We know other boroughs have got school places, so they will get exactly the same support. But also, and you know, it was very emotional to see, you know, basically, women that had been working there, you know, basically as parents, as classroom assistants, as teachers, you know, coming towards the end of their career, wondering what was going to be next for them. So obviously we need to, you know, we have got a local economy team, and we need to make sure that our colleagues, I mean, John Batterson isn't here at the moment, but I know he'll be 100% behind that. We know that we've got colleagues in the local economy team who are now going to turn their attention, you know, to the school and to see what more can be done, you know, to actually help, you know, find alternative employment. So I wanted to add those things in. I want to confirm, and I know that you'll ask this anyway, but I want to confirm that everything will be done to make sure that the children and the parents and the families at the school and the school support staff will get as much support as we possibly can give. I want to personally thank David and Nicola for all that they have done to support the school, and if there was any way that we could have kept this going, we absolutely would have. I think now, more than ever, you know, we're at the conclusion of keeping education strong, and you're all wondering, you know, why is it now? Charlotte Sharman, massive campaign. Why aren't we finding alternative ways? But I want to say, before we hear, you know, from the school and the experts, I want to say that from my own experience, working with schools, I mean, I can call them out, you know, what has happened, because we don't want to close schools and we want to give them a chance. But actually, it's a double-edged sword, because actually you give more time, you're looking for options, they don't come into fruition. Who is suffering? The people who are suffering are the families, because they're in limbo, you know, and obviously the school staff. So, you know, it's with heavy heart that I make the recommendation. If anyone's got any ideas, we want to hear them. We've had an extensive consultation. So, you know, I think I've said enough now. I want to basically open it out. We've got the Chair of Governors, we want to hear from him. And obviously, you know, we want to hear from our Director of Children's Services. Thank you.
David, I will come to you in a second. I just want to hear from Alistair first. Sorry, I will come to Alistair first.
Yeah, thank you. Alistair Smith, Director of Children's Services. I'll speak briefly. Firstly, to acknowledge that for all council officers involved in this process, it's not easy. We recognise that it's a unique school community, as all schools are, where we sadly have to have dialogue about financial challenges that often impact on education standards and may result in closure. So on a human level, that's acknowledged, firstly. Secondly, I want to repeat my acknowledgement of Dave and Nicola, and also Rihanna, who's here today, who did work with the school during the last autumn term, when the council was able to find a grant that enabled additional support to be put around the school to look at any alternative for closure. So if you think back when the school was considering joining with St Jude's, it was because there were financial challenges then. When we put the team around the school, it was because those financial challenges continued. So in some respects, when it emerges in a public consultation, it's a later stage of the process, because we'd obviously do everything we can to prevent that needing to be there. I just want to deal with one issue specifically, because it came up at the parents' meeting and the meeting with staff. We were asked, challenged a bit, to say, could the school not run on a half-formentary school? I just think it's important to acknowledge that in order to do that, the school already has a deficit of 277,000. It's in the report, and it made a loss in the year of 230,000. We have to pay significant redundancies, which would be over £500,000, as well as the school incurring debt in year. To pay off those redundancies, it would take the deficit to £1 million, and probably north of £1 million. Then to run a half-formentary school, which would struggle in terms of education standards, and there's lots of detail I can give to explain that, but it's that where you usually find half-formentary schools in rural communities, where there's an understanding why you might support those more, less so in a city where there's more access to other schools, especially schools that have places, then you struggle to really find a reason to justify that. When we have to look at all our schools in financial deficit, how we could have a school that was possibly able to just manage financially year to year, but wouldn't be able to pay off that £1 million debt that would be incurred. And that's not, when we have to be fair to all schools. So I think it's very sad. And I wanted to explain that, and we've done some additional workings on that since we were asked by that, and I know the unions have followed up around that. I think it's important to explain. I've got Rick on my right, who was the author of the report, who's happy to take any more detailed questions you might want to ask around that, and I'll certainly cover as many as I can, but I'm happy to stop there and hand over to Dave.
Thank you. Dave.
Hi. Yes, so I'm here on behalf of the school representing the 116 pupils who face the upheaval now of having to find a new school, particularly those in year 5, moving into year 6, and their families, also the 26 staff who find themselves redundant at the end of a school year. As Jasmine said, many who have been at the school for many, many years and now face finding a new job. And on the wider community in Elephant and Castle, who face having another kind of long-established kind of establishment removed from that area and around all the changes going on and has been going on in Elephant and Castle over the last kind of 20 years. Parents choose Charlotte Sharman because it's a community and it's part of a community. And so we've got dedicated staff they've created a kind of unique learning environment for pupils who know the pupils from when they join nursery reception into year 6. So they're dedicated to students' learning. Parents have made it clear that students who have struggled at other schools have settled well at Charlotte Sharman, and there's a worry that those students who may have additional needs or special needs, as that impact on them as they move to a new school. I know that there is support in place for them, but there is a real risk of the impact on students and the wider impact on the wider school community, wherever they may go, as well as their families who may already be struggling as well. As Alice said, since last year, we've been kind of engaging willingly and effectively with local authority to look at our kind of financial situation, try and put mitigations in place. This comes on the back of the merger process with St Jude, which took 18 months to kind of come to conclude, followed by entering into license deficit program. So 2 fairly hefty kind of programs we've gone through, which have kind of taken governors and staff kind of a lot of kind of time and focus, and there are alternative options we have put forward, as Jasmine has discussed, and it feels to not give us the time to act more decisively and creatively around those, after those two lengthy processes, which have kind of taken our bandwidth, as it were, is to kind of possibly neglect what might be possible in terms of kind of preserving the school community. I think it has to be considered, you know, why in our particular area, in our ward, numbers have fallen, and it can't be seen without the wider context of the smaller number of affordable rented and council houses in Elephant and Castle, and the impact that has had on our school in particular and in our area. This is not an issue just for Southwark or for Elephant and Castle, it's an issue across London and the UK. But I think it's what's 20 years ago's decisions to kind of to demolish the Haygate in Aylesbury. Kind of this is the kind of decisions kind of coming back that maybe weren't made at that point around the impact that would have on the wider community in Elephant and Castle. So that has to be this has to be considered in that context around the affordability of housing for our families in Elephant and Castle at this moment. I've also kind of I've kind of coming to the end, but I've got a few words from one of our students in year 3 who kind of asked me to kind of pass this on, who said, I'm feeling very sad the school is closing. It's unfair people have just started and they have to leave and they can't play with their new friends. How would you feel if you can play with your friends? Charlotte Sharman is like a family to us. The teachers are like our mum and dad, and our friends are like our brothers and sisters to us. Please keep our school open. I'll finish there, but yeah.
Thank you. Is there anything else you'd like to add? No. Can I just open up to questions from Cabinet then? I want to start with the first one. I see some hands. There was obviously a number of points you made there, and I think people want to pick up on all of them. The first one I wanted to pick up on was for children with additional needs, what support will be in place for them specifically if we were to make the decision to close this school today?
With every school closure, and every school closure is a tragedy, as you will know, there is a team of people in the SEND team who come in and assess the children, and this is done on a one-to-one basis, as indeed are the normal school placements, but we pay particular attention. We are just finishing up with St Mary Magdalene, which we'll come on to in a bit, and the same is happening at Sharman. We will ensure that every child that needs a fresh EHCP or specific attention to allow them to transfer is transferred to an appropriate environment. I wouldn't say it's something that we're used to, but we've done this with 6 schools so far, and this school, it's something that we need to do. It's our duty to do, and we will ensure that every child who's presently attending Sharman will be given an appropriate placement.
Thank you. I'm going to just come around the table, so I'll start with Helen and then Evelyn.
Thanks very much for coming in, officers as well, for explaining the process, and Jasmine for explaining the work that has gone on to look at different options to date. I'll also speak as a ward councillor in a neighbouring ward, because I know that there are children in my ward that attend Charlotte Sharman in Chaucer ward, like from the Rockingham estate and around there. I suppose it's just to understand a bit more in terms of the level of support and the other options surrounding school places. It would be helpful to understand where you think children are likely to be going, where, I guess, reassurance that there are places available in local schools which won't require a kind of significant distance for children to travel, and just to understand what that support package looks like really for families, and to thank you to David and for your really powerful testimony, and just to, I guess, underline how difficult we know that this is, and what a hard decision it is to make. Thanks.
Sorry, yes, we have a considerable number of vacancies in the area, and the first thing we did when we considered this was to look where children could potentially go. And we took the January census, looked where there were vacancies, and there is a dedicated admissions officer who is doing nothing other than this, and the work at St Mary Magdalene, Graham, and I sent him a list of vacancies, and he's validated that with every school, with every year group, and where possible, children are being transferred across in friendship groups, things like that, where there are vacancies. The schools have worked very well with us. We've no complaints in doing that, and we've no worries that we will not be able to accommodate the children close to where they are. Within 3/4 of a mile, I think I say in the report, there's something of the order of 700 or 800 vacancies, which is many more times than there are children in the school.
Evelyn.
Hello everyone, I'm Evelyn Nakoto, Cabinet Member for Health and Wellbeing. So I just want to say a huge thank you to Jasmine and the team for the really, I would say, heart-wrenching work you're doing. I totally appreciate and how difficult it is. As a mother whose children went through similar school closure, I totally get where parents, how parents are feeling, and I thank you for confirming that the fact that there's support for the parents and children and making sure that they go to the right school afterwards. I think my question is about horizon scanning. Obviously, a lot of this is out of our control, but how are we preempting or, looking at future possibilities of schools that may also struggle, and how are we putting in place support, really early support for our schools?
So I think that Keeping Education Strong strategy and the work underneath that has helped to put the council maintained schools particularly on a more secure footing. So we are hoping that over the next year, I would describe it as a year of purposeful consolidation with the schools. So we'll be looking proactively with them about where some may need to think about merger in the future, but they need to think of that a longer way off, because those decisions are not anything the council can force on schools. Governing bodies need to decide together, as can be seen with Sharman and St Jude's. So we are having open conversations. We're going to have a second pupil-placed planning seminar, hopefully in early July. We had one successfully last July. It involved multi-academy trusts as well as representatives from schools. So we're being very proactive. Sadly, as my colleague Rick has said, we have a lot of experience of this now, particularly school closures. We would want to avoid that at all costs, but priority needs to be supporting the best education for our children. So we are spending a lot of time thinking about that at the moment and planning that strategy. There's a head teachers briefing tomorrow morning, and we'll be going through that with them as well.
If I may, I just wanted to come in on that. I think that is, that's the acid test, that question. And I think while, when we did Keeping Education Strong, it felt, that we were at desperate measures, and we had, if you remember, the schools were working hand in hand with the officers, the newspapers, not helpful, saying that any school that had a financial issue, which was nearly all of them, said that they were all going to close. So, basically, we got the strategy together. It's seen us this far. But I think, the question about where we go next, if we do get a chance to pause and get on top of these, we know that actually if it carries on like this, it's going to permeate, the secondary schools. So we need to be vigilant. But actually, there's more than just administration of this. And, we've had discussions we've got Alex from the trade unions, and everybody wants to get together and get our arms collectively around this. And also, that doesn't preclude the people around this table, because we need, people in care, we need regeneration, we need housing, and we all need to come together about what kind of borough that we want. We need housing, and we need to make the borough habitable for families again. So, I think it's a good question, but I'm not trying to cleverly put that back on you, but it's something that our team cannot do alone, really. So hopefully, while we've got a pause next year in between strategies, we'll be able to be inclusive and actually get ahead of this.
Thank you, Dave. Thank you for your deputation, your words. I think they really were powerful. I've got a couple of questions. The first one is around staff and sort of 2P and sort of finding places for staff should Charlotte Sharman close. And not just teaching staff, but, the dinner staff, the canteen staff and the cleaners as well, because they're all integral to the running of a school. So it'd be good to know what conversations we've been having and where we are, how far along we are with that as well. And the other thing is, have we considered merging with any of the schools in Lambeth? Charlotte Sharman is right on the border with Lambeth. You've got Oasis, which is the Multi-Academy Trust. They've got, obviously, the secondary school at the old Lincoln Tower, which used to be Hawkstone Hall, and they've got the old Joanna School in Lower Marsh. Have we had any conversations with Multi-Academy Trusts or other schools, maybe in Lambeth, about mergers as well? Because I understand, obviously, with St Jude's, but the two nearest schools are faith schools. St Jude's and St George's are the nearest faith schools to Charlotte Sharman. So it would be just good to know just some clarification about any conversations about mergers of Lambeth, but also what's happening with the staff and all of the staff, not just teaching and teaching assistants, but the cleaners and the dinner staff and anyone else who sort of works in the school.
And let me take Portia's question as well, and you can come back on them in the round. Portia.
Mine wasn't actually a question. It was just to say thank you to David, because I can only imagine how difficult this whole situation has been for you. And all of the decisions that we're having to make, especially today, are due to extenuating circumstances that we couldn't change. And even if we wanted to with the power that we had, it was really, really difficult to make this decision. But I could see how hard it was for you to say what you were saying. So I just wanted to say thank you from all of us for coming here today.
I think we all echo that wholeheartedly.
Yeah. So I'm happy to respond then. Around cheaper employment support, as a maintained, as a foundation school, this is its own employer. So there's no opportunity for redeployment of staff within the council or with other schools. That being said, I had a conversation with the head of local economy team, particularly to look at what extra support we could give to those non-teaching qualified staff, because at the meeting we had with unions particularly, they were most concerned about those staff. So we are putting that together. They were very receptive to that conversation, and we're going to look at what, probably involving Southwark works, but what extra support can be given for those staff. I mean, I understand from other school leaders that there are recruitment challenges, even getting good quality support staff, but it's difficult. If you've worked at somewhere for 30 years, I understand that's not easy. So we're going to put that support in. Around approaches to other schools, others may give more detail around that, but there certainly was consideration. It's mentioned in the report about Michael Faraday School, for example, around Federated School. But our knowledge of multi-academy trusts is that they're not going to take on schools with substantial debt, which is the situation with Charlotte Sharman. And I think we'll see in the next item around St Mary Magdalene School, there was a consideration around a multi-academy trust, which wouldn't take the risk there in relation to that. So I don't know whether Richard or Rhiannon have anything more to add. We don't formally approach Lambeth, but when our maintained schools are saying they won't do something because of the financial risk around that and knowledge of academies, I think that's not an exercise that we've undertaken.
Richard Hunt, one of the principal advisors in Children's Services. The conversations around amalgamation happened with other local non-faith maintained primary schools, but there are strict criteria around amalgamations in terms of another site being able to absorb the entire school children population and also the staff, and that wasn't possible. In terms of across London, looking at Lambeth, that wasn't necessarily explored because of the size of the building again and the size of the staff role and also the pupil role. Education leaders across London are looking for a pan-London solution to this because it isn't just Southwark, it's across all local authorities, and that's the key message I think we're taking into that next phase.
I'm talking with my colleagues in Lambeth, they're closing, merging a large number of schools. So I don't think an approach about a merger would have been well received. It's something happening in that whole area, not just stop at Waterloo. It's it's a kind of, as you say, a pan-London approach that we need.
David.
Yeah, I think obviously governors have worked with local authority to look at those options. I think the moment consultation for closure was opened, that puts on hold kind of decision making because of not knowing the outcome. I think whatever the decision is today, I think governors are in a place where those conversations have been had, and we'd be willing to have those conversations in whatever way to move things forward. But just say we have had some of those conversations as well over the last academic year.
Thank you. Were there any more questions that people had? No. Well, can I thank you for coming and speaking today? And in a moment, we'll consider the decision in the report. But thank you very much for speaking. I just wanted to say, I suppose, three things again. The first is you made the point about changes in the local area around Elephant Castle and the number of homes and how affordable those homes are, and I don't underestimate that at all. I think it's right to say that across Southwark as a whole, the number of social rent homes in the borough is roughly the same now as it was a decade ago. However, they are in slightly different places as a result of other changes that are happening. And I think that what that says to me is then, yes, some of the local changes have had impacts on individual schools, including yours, but across the borough, it's something else that's going on. It's not the supply of affordable homes. We need more, for sure. We need to keep building more. But it is these other big changes in the population, including actually the cost of private renting in particular, which many families on low incomes a decade ago, certainly 2 decades ago, were private renting in the borough, and that is now out of their reach. The second thing I want to say is just a huge thank you to everybody in the school community who has been guiding the school through this process, whether that be yourselves and all of the governors, whether that be all of the teaching staff, support staff, trade unions, families. These decisions are in many ways about how schools are funded. So for those in the audience who don't know, schools are funded per pupil. And that means that if you have a class that's only got is half full, you only have half the income, and then when you've paid for the teacher and the classroom, there isn't funding for all the other things children need wrapped around them, whether that be support staff, teaching assistants, trips, all of the other things you need. And that's why it's important that we have in our borough full classrooms, so we can provide a good education. But I completely recognise that schools are much more than just somewhere you go to learn. They're a community. They're something that is just part of the heart of children. They're where parents make some of their best friends. They are many other things than just a place to go and learn. So we understand how difficult all of these decisions are and how important they are to get right. So I'll ask you to return to the audience into your seats, and we'll consider the recommendations in the report. Thank you very much for coming today.
Thank you.
So in this report, there is just one recommendation, yes, which is to go ahead, and the recommendation is to officially make the decision to close the school. Having considered all of the evidence we have today, much as this is a difficult decision, I do recommend that we make that decision to close the school today. Can we agree that recommendation? Agreed. Thank you very much. I want to thank again the people who came along today, and I want to say again how important it is that all of our work is done to support people through this process, the children, the parents, the staff at the school, and I ask all of the council officers to do that, as I know you will. We're going to move on to the next report, which is similarly another proposal for a school closure of St Mary Magdalene, and I'm going to ask Jasmine to introduce that report. Sorry, I should first say, do we have anyone from the school present? We do, yes. If you'd like to come up to the front. Yeah. So when you've had a chance to take a seat, if you just want to introduce yourselves and you press the green button to turn the microphone on to do that, please.
Good morning. My name is Jo Lewis-Burgess. I'm the co-chair of governors of St Mary Magdalene School and also the curate at St Luke's Church in North Peckham.
And I'm Sonia Fippard. I am also co-chair of governors at St Mary Magdalene School and a member of St Mary Magdalene Church.
Good morning. I'm Ros Cordner and I'm the director of the Southwark Diocesan Board of Education, which Mary Magdalene's sits in. Thank you.
Thank you very much. As before, I'll ask Jasmine and Alistair to do some instruction, and I will come back to you for the points that you want to make, and then we'll open up for discussion with Cabinet.
Okay, colleagues, again, I'm very upset to bring yet another school which we're proposing for closure. And this time it's a much-loved St Mary Magdalene from my own ward, actually, Rye Lane ward. Over the last 5 years, the reception numbers have been at or below 20 pupils. Again, we know the issues here, falling birth rates, and 35% of children leaving London. In my own ward, it's been a hotspot of regeneration, yet, we haven't got, basically families are not staying, so, that's like a massive issue. As is the case with Charlotte Sharman, the decision to close St Mary Magdalene has not been taken lightly. And, again, there was like a huge campaign to keep it open. I think the school have been amazingly active, as has the diocese. They've been like, no corner is left unturned, looking at possibilities to keep the school open. I mean, really, we've looked at, opening a nursery on the site, basically developing special education needs, which wasn't all that straightforward as well, because it's a diocese, not one of our schools. So, we've looked at every which way, really. I think, I forgot to mention as well that my colleague Esme Dobson is also in the audience, and, my own colleagues, basically opened up scrutiny, as part of the campaign. Not very usual, but, it just shows you the strength of feeling. And obviously the parents. So the school staff, the diocese and parents made the strong campaign. But unfortunately, the finances just didn't stack up. And I think on both sides, we saw, the finances weren't right basically at the same time. So our education team are here, and all that we can say is that, we want to ensure that the values of inclusion of this amazing school, which is defined St Mary Magdalene, continue to live on in the schools that we find the children that we will be moving on, really, and that's the very least we can do. And, I'll leave it there. I'll open up, to the school leaders and the leader of the diocese, Ross, and also my team. Thank you.
I should just bring in Alistair first, and then I will come to you.
Sorry, yeah.
Again, repeating how we acknowledge how difficult it is. I want to thank the school, the diocese and Board of Governors for coming here today, but also acknowledge Anne Harding, who is the head teacher, who has been on a long journey with the school to try and support it, to try to save it at every turn. And on a human level, I know that she's done the absolute utmost she can to try to save the school, which we absolutely expect. We find with every school, the community wants to save it, and it's all very difficult, these decisions. So I won't say any more. I think it's very clearly set out within the paper how the role has fallen. I thank the leader for explaining how the funding system works nationally. One of the injustices is that the money comes into the council per pupil, which it gives to schools. But if schools accumulate debt, that debt is then on the council. It doesn't go back to government. So it's very, very difficult. We would like a different system, but we're not able to have that and preserve the best education we possibly can for children. I'll end there and hand over to colleagues to speak.
Sonia. Oh, thanks. Sonia, much louder. I don't know what happened there. Sonia.
Yes, I have known St Mary Magdalene School for 44 years as a member of the church and more recently as a governor, but it's been serving our community for 170. So this is a very, very sad day. And we do continue to believe that with more imaginative engagement with the council, not in the most recent months, but before, there were solutions that would have preserved some of what is very, very special about this school. it has been noticeable how many different, as it were, vulnerabilities and needs it meets within our community, and those numbers and that proportion have only increased, even as numbers have been small. I'd also like it on record that in our case, the governors absolutely, with the senior leadership team, have restructured, and we kept the deficit down extremely effectively until the effect of being a school seen to be likely to close was a sort of double whammy, vicious circle effect. That said, we did recognise early this year, when we looked at the numbers, that we couldn't see at that point a practicable alternative, and we've worked very, very hard with lots of support from the SDBE, with local authority officers to try and find solutions and to ensure that if closure was going to happen, it happened in the best possible way for our children and for our staff. We've emphasised from the outset of, as it were, that bit of the journey, that the focus must be on our most vulnerable children, both those with, as it were, very formal and well-recognised special needs, those young at the very beginning of the school whose needs might be known but not yet formally identified, and the wide range of additional needs. It's therefore to us disappointing and worrying that after lots of hard work by the school team, that we still have 4 children, all with special educational needs, who don't have a confirmed place, all boys, by the way. That said, I want to thank our staff, and I echo Alistair's mention of our head teacher, Anna Harding, for their amazing dedication. They have remained focused on the children. The school has remained a happy place. The children are having sports day today. They could send the people who weren't needed to come and be at this meeting because the focus remains there. We do have some fairly significant issues with the closure process, but I'll keep that for another day, and we'll put those in writing, because it's, despite all of our efforts, and the efforts, and I would give credit here to many council officers to make it possible. It's difficult, it's painful, and it's pretty dysfunctional. But nevertheless, our thanks to all those who've worked very hard to make it as least bad as it could be. Over to you, Ros.
Thank you, Sonia, and I want to start by thanking governors, because as governors in a church school, a huge responsibility falls to them, and throughout this period, governors and particularly Anna as head teacher have worked tirelessly to find the best way forward. We do find ourselves in this position where they are ensuring that closure is done with dignity and that the whole community is respectfully acknowledged, the history is acknowledged, and the closure goes well. The head teacher said we will have 50 things to do before you leave Mary Magdalene, and all fun things, going to the seaside, sports day today. So they have stood up to the challenge, but also made sure that this anxiety and this worry and this stress hasn't fallen beyond the top tier, so the school has continued. There was a question earlier about what does the horizon look like. The small school approach that Mary Magdalene ran successfully for 18 months, albeit at a tipping point as the funding evaporated, gave those pupils an amazing experience. So there is something to be said around what do we want to be offering in terms of education for the future. Because we're at a crossroads now where we know birth rate has fallen. We know school organisation needs to look different, and we've talked about potential mergers in the pipeline for the longer term. But as a representative of the Board of Education, and we cover 12 local authorities, a key job for us is to say, what does that school structure look like for the future? Are we saying only 2 formentaries survive? Are we saying let's find a way to make 1 formentary school structure better? That's a challenge for us all. There is a huge link with the housing provision, and I think that point has been well made, so I won't labour it, but it's certainly something that we come back to. And I think one area that has stood out all the way through this conversation with St Mary Magdalene has been, what about our special needs children? We accept the challenge of closure, but what about our special needs children? And as Sonia said, there are 4 children that we as a group who have been meeting with Alistair's team every week since October, it feels like. And the number has whittled down, but we are now in the middle of June with 4 families where there's no solution. And these are children who have significant special needs that aren't going to be absorbed by the local maintained school next door or the local church school next door. And we committed on Friday that if we didn't have places for them, we would raise that at this meeting as an absolute priority. I want to take the time to thank Alistair in particular for his time and commitment to finding the best next step and for being open to any possible solution that we have put forward. I think we need to be creative. Finding a way for a slow closure, I think, would have alleviated some of those difficulties with send places, but we will learn lessons from this going forward. I want to thank Councillor Ali for your availability to attend meetings at the school, at the board and at Tooley Street. I recognise that in amongst everything else, finding time to be heard is really important for school communities. Thank you.
Thank you. Ros, did you want to add anything? Or?
No, I think it's all been covered. Thank you.
Thank you. Let me first say, thank you to all of you for everything you've set out has underlined quite how much work you've personally put into this, and so I want to say a thank you for that, as well as everyone else in the school. You've made some points about lessons for the future for these processes. I think they're well heard. We probably don't have time to go through them now, but can I ask formally that we do a sort of lessons learned process and have a look through this and other closures, actually, for all of them, but this one in particular, just to look at what went well, what didn't go well, what should be done differently in the future. How do you best address the very difficult point that you made about as soon as it becomes a sense in the parent community that school is closing, it sort of becomes an inevitability because people stop sending their children there for obvious reasons. So yeah, I know you've worked very hard to address that up to now, but I'm sure there are more lessons we can learn on that as well as everything else. So if we could do that exercise, including obviously with the school community to do that, I'd greatly appreciate that. So please can we do that? Can I come first to perhaps the most important point that you made in all of there is that there are 4 children with special educational needs who are, at the moment don't have places to go to, and I think, Anne, you wanted to come back on this point. Anna, sorry.
Yeah, hi, I'm Anna Chiver, the Assistant Director for SEND. First, I'd just like to say thank you to Mary Magdalene for being such an inclusive school. You know that you've really supported many of our young people who have got additional needs and special educational needs. It's right, we have got a number of young people who have 3 to 4 young people who are waiting for a placement. As part of that particular piece of engagement work, we've been undertaking updated assessment work from our educational psychology service and also engaging with our range of schools, trying to find an appropriate placement for those young people in our local community. I've gone back to Anna late last week to talk to her about kind of by Monday the 23rd, we will have decisions on all of those placements for 3 of those young people, and we're working directly with those families. There is one young person in particular where we've got to be working with some of our independent and special schools, and we know that there's real pressure within that system about placements, and we've consulted over 35 placements and provision for those young people, and we're going back to identify placement. We are confident that we will find placements for all of those young people, 3 of whom are likely to be placed within our maintained sector, within our school, and 1 of whom is likely to be able to access a specialist placement. But we're working closely with the families and with our local schools, so thinking about what that support will need to be specific and specialised to support transition. So that's where we're up to. We've got about a week and a half before we're clear about those placements being named. And there are schools in the audience here today who have offered placements for some of those young people leaving St Mary Magdalene. So we would want to try and place them within schools that we know are confident in supporting special educational needs.
That's very good to hear, and there's a clear assurance there that in the next week and a half, 2 weeks, you'll be able to come back to the school with placement. So please take that back to the school, and Anna, I know you will follow up directly with them. Can I open up to any other questions that people want to ask? Jasmine's trying to finish. Sarah.
Thank you. I had a question for Alistair, if you don't mind. We took both of the agenda items that we're considering today. The issue of housing has been mentioned in terms of both the impacts of regeneration, but also housing costs more widely. You talked on the other agenda item about the process of planning the years ahead in terms of schools' capacity, and it would be useful to understand how far, as part of that process, how much regeneration and housing delivery in the borough can be taken into account, or whether those issues are more long-term than the current process.
I'd start off by saying it's not just about housing, it's about people having less children. And that's a global issue, that's a national issue, it's a regional issue. There's also, I mean, I go around to schools, I listen to what school leaders talk to me about. Brexit had an impact, cost of living crisis has had an impact as well. And there's also the issue about temporary accommodation as well. And some schools are affected more than others around that, and how families move. So it's a difficult challenge there. There's no easy solution. Schools leaders would often say to me, they want more housing, more family housing near them. That's what they say all the time. That's no surprise. So we've got the People Place Planning Seminar for July. We've also setting up an opportunity early in the next term for school leaders who want to put this out to all head teachers so that they can hear directly from housing, those that work with housing in the council, those that work with our planning area, those that work with asylum seekers as well, so that there can be direct dialogue with what schools are saying the issues are with those that manage and impact those that are outside children's services. So there's no easy answer to that, but we want to take all into consideration to try to influence that system.
Just a couple of points, if I may. I think really, just on that, on the housing, I mean, it's just such a key factor, isn't it? I mean, obviously, we know even with St Mary Magdalene, it's like part of a ward which has been defined by regeneration. And yet, you know, how many, I mean, basically, most of my streets, you know, have moved to Bristol. Do you know what I mean? And I just think, look, you know, you've got to have a situation whereby, you know, we know what happens. I do keep in touch with them. You know, Bristol is not London, you know, and they would move back in a heartbeat if they could afford to live here. So, you know, I mean, I'm not arguing against you. I'm just saying that it's such a, you know, I mean, also, you know yourself, you know, someone who's moved to Kent, you know, for more affordability, you know, we've got to, you know, we can't have this brain drain. We've got to basically link regeneration up, and so that, you know, people can afford to live here. I think going forward, Ross, I want to thank you, you know, for all that you have done. And I think really, we've said what we want to do. We've got to pause. You know, we've got this issue. We've delivered keeping education strong, which we delivered in haste, although having to said that, we've mentioned other local authorities. I won't name them, but actually they didn't do that. And it did help us keep a little bit in front of it. But I think going forward, you know, we want to be as inclusive as possible. And, you know, I think really I would look to the diocese really, because you have also got experience, not just here in Southwark, but, you know, right across the piece. And I think that will be really valuable. And I think really one thing that we haven't mentioned that we have got a government, and we need to, you know, use our leverages with the Labour government. You know, we know we've had Florence Eshalomi and other people looking at this. Well, what are we doing about it? Because actually, we've got to find a different way, because it doesn't add up, does it? I mean, it's an oddity that, you know, you have schools that have their own governance structure, they're leading, you know, they're making their decisions, and then the local authority have this decision whether to keep it open. You know, we have to work together, and, you know, we can't let our government off the hook as well. So whatever we come up with, and we will do lessons learned, but, you know, we need to lobby government for, you know, a much more rounded approach as well, in particular to regeneration. The last thing I want to say is to say thank you, and, you know, we'll continue working together. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I don't think I have any other questions. So thank you again for coming and presenting to us today. And again, my personal thanks, all of our thanks for the work you've done to support the school through all of this difficult process. And again, to make it such a fantastic place for the children and parents over the years that it's been running. So thank you very much. I'll take us on to the recommendations. There is just one recommendation here, but actually I'm going to formally add a second one. So the second one is that, if somebody's ready to note down, yes, that a report be produced on the lessons learned from school closures in Southwark over recent years and reported back to Cabinet in the autumn of 2025. Yeah. With those, can we agree those route to recommendations then, the closure of the school and that report? Agreed? Agreed. Agreed. Thank you very much. We now have, apologies for anyone who's trying to follow the agenda and I'm moving around, but I'm moving it to what feels like the right order for the day. We now have 2 reports on proposed school expansions onto sites where we have had schools close. The first of which, actually, what's the running order? Is it Highshore first?
Yes, Highshore first.
Yeah, so the first of which is Highshore School. And again, just by a way of general overview of both of these reports, one of the things we have been very clear on as a Cabinet is that where we have closed primary schools, we want to make the best possible use of those sites for the future. These are 2 examples of us doing that, and I will hand over to Jasmine to introduce the first one.
Okay. Shall we, can I just bring in the panel before I start?
Of course, yes.
Okay. Anna, do you want to start and then we'll move across?
Yep, I'm Anna Shiver, the Assistant Director for SEND.
Alistair Smith, Director of Children's Services.
Evelina Demopulu, Head Teacher, Highshore School.
Michael Crowe, Assistant Director of Transformation and Children's Services.
Okay, brilliant. Thank you very much. Okay, Highshore expansion. I'm very happy to bring this report for the expansion of Highshore Special Needs School through repurposing of Comber Grove Primary School. You remember, 2004, we had to close Comber Grove School. One of the things that we've been consistent about is that, you know, we're victims of demographic shock, but we always said that any of the schools, you know, in our power, we would keep open for that education estate. So this is an example where we have managed to do this. Highshore School is a secondary education school for young people with complex special needs, and the expansion helps us to move closer to our target to support children with special needs in schools closer to their homes as possible. So the proposal includes capital investment to expand the school site and include new classrooms and ensure the facilities remain at the highest standard. And I want to thank the head teacher, Evelina, and the School of Governors at Highshore, who have worked closely with our education team to, you know, bring this proposal to life. So I think I'll just hand over to the panel, if that's all right.
Yeah, who would like to go first?
I'll just be very brief to say we're delighted to bring this to you here. Anna can speak to more the council side of planning for children, young people. Mike did the analysis around the report, the pupil-placed planning, so it's a really strong team. But I was privileged to visit Highshore School very recently. I could see how they'd squeezed so many pupils in there, and I think it's a real opportunity for young people in the borough. I'm delighted to hear from Evelina to say more about that.
Yeah.
Hello, I'm the teacher. I'm the head teacher at Highshore School. I've been in Highshore School since September 2023. We are an oversubscribed school. For any of you who have come to visit the building was originally built for 90 students. I've got 168 currently. And I understand there is some leeway from DFE, but still it's very dense. It doesn't feel so for everyone who has been to visit. And the building is very much feels mainstream. Our young people, some of them do have complex needs, some of them have moderate learning difficulties, some of them have severe learning difficulties. But because of the infrastructure of the building, we are not in a position to fully deliver a curriculum, especially for the sixth form young people. Our infrastructure does not allow us to deliver a curriculum around life skills, around independence, to be able to have an independent living flat, to be able to have more life skills lessons, to be able to do more cooking and things like that. Also, with the increasing needs of our young people have come with sensory needs, emotional needs, and there is a real need to regulate. Again, how currently the infrastructure is, it does not allow, we do not have the space to support the young people to regulate, to take themselves off somewhere else. And there is, alongside the need for savings, the need to keep the young people in borough, more importantly, is to be able to have a facility whereby we can have the resources that we need to deliver the curriculum, to enable the young people to be functional citizens and as much as able as possible in their local communities, but also that will allow us to renovate our current site, to have a bit more breathing space. I don't have a meeting room currently. Every single space is utilised, and there are young people being taught. So this expansion will allow the curriculum from the year 7 all the way to year 14, will allow us the facilities, and we will be able, also there is there's great expertise in the building, which we would love to be able to share with other colleagues. Again, we do need the facilities to have an outreach provision. So there are a lot of exciting things that will come out, but most importantly, we will be in a position to serve the needs of our population in the best possible way. And also there is a high demand from young people from other boroughs to join High Shore. So again, we'll be able to hopefully to accommodate that. And no, I understand that we need to work fast. There's a large number of people, the architects, the contractors. We need to have a tight deadline that I hope we'll all collectively be able to work and deliver.
Thank you very much. I mean, it sounds like it's going to make a fantastic difference for the students of the school. So you set that out very compellingly. I have visited the school, and it's been a couple of years now, but it's a fantastic, lovely, airy building you're in already, but I can understand that with those numbers, it must feel very, very full right now. So having the space to do all of those other things, and particularly the opportunities that you've set out for younger people as they're coming towards the end of the school time to think about their life in the round, and it sounds like it make a huge difference. Are there any other questions that people have? I have one, which is obviously the closure of Comber Primary School was similarly, as we've heard this morning, a difficult process for the local community. I wondered what the plans are to tell residents in the area about this decision, should we take it today, as we will, to make sure that people understand that the best use out of the building that many residents quite literally look out of their back window into the schoolyard and wondering what's going to happen with the site.
So a couple of things. The first thing to note is in undertaking the consultation to make this decision, we did publish the information about the relocation to Comber Grove, and we did receive some correspondence, and we did communicate out to the local area as well and through ward members. As we start to move into the design, I think one of the things that in particular we'll need to, and we will do active engagement with the local community, is around the transport access into the school. So we'll be using those opportunities through the design process to engage the local community.
Thank you very much. Any other questions? Natasha?
Didn't want to, it's not a question, I just wanted to say thank you. The work that you're doing is tremendous in being forward-thinking. Looking at some of the key reports for community safety, a number of young people who do get involved in crime do have special educational needs, and this is quite clearly set out in the Lammy report, and I can see that from the impact needs assessment, a lot of work has gone into that. So some of my work, I guess one of my questions, I said I didn't have a question, but I guess I did. It says Black African children in the Equality Impact Needs Assessment, but it didn't break it down, so I'd like to know about that, but definitely to say thank you.
So the way we've broken it down in the needs assessment is based on the information that we collect for our statutory returns. So if you would like us to, we can take away and provide some more detailed information if you'd like us to work that through.
Could I ask that you share some of that information with the community safety team so we can look at different cohorts? Thank you.
Well, thank you very much for coming today. My thanks again for the work that the school's doing and the support they're providing. We look forward to seeing it, the second building, the second site fitted out and being used. I'd love to come and visit when it's up and running. It's in my ward, so I have a particular interest. Thank you very much. Can I take us on to the recommendations this morning? Can we agree the recommendations? Agreed. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Expansion of Cherry Gardens.
So we now have a second report, very similar, the expansion of Cherry Gardens. Jasmine, would you like to introduce that one?
Certainly. I'm Gregory Dewey. I'm the Executive Head Teacher at the River Peg Federation in Southwark.
And I'm Kelly Hawker. I'm the Head Teacher of Cherry Garden School.
Okay, so this is the expansion of Cherry Gardens Special School, and I'm delighted to bring this positive Cabinet report for formal approval to expand Cherry Gardens School. This is in response, as you've heard before, to the rising demand for specialist early years and primary places in the borough, so this time for early years, for children with profound and multiple learning difficulties. So Cherry Gardens, I'm sure many of you know it, is a highly regarded school with a proven track record of nurturing some of the most vulnerable children in our borough. And the idea is to expand the Cherry Gardens School through the repurposing of the Bellenden School. And the schools are close by and both in mine and Esme's ward, Rye Lane. So the proposals include additional teaching spaces, therapeutic facilities and outdoor learning spaces. I mean, I'm sure many of you have been to Bellenden School. Well, actually, on Cherry Gardens. They're both new and they're both, well, relatively new. And they're both like, you know, they're like Barockian surprises. You walk around Southwark and, well, it's all over Southwark, really. And you can't go far without bumping into, you know, an amazing school, which is usually head to foot with, you know, glass and looking really beautiful. And these schools, it's important to notice this because they raise the aspiration of everyone in it, really, the teachers, the students. So I just wanted to mention that. I want to thank Kelly Hawker, and in particular I want to thank Gregory Dowie, really, executive heads. I mean, basically, these are, you know, very, well, all our head teachers are brilliant, but, you know, they're always, you know, not only are they brilliant teachers, but they're looking at how we can really improve our offer for the children in our borough. I was going to save this to the end, but I noticed you didn't ask me to come back before, so I'll get it in now. I mean, obviously, we've got all our top people on this table, and I just have to say, we did say in Southwark 2030 that, you know, we will have a revolution in special education needs, and I think really, thanks to everyone involved, this is, you know, more than a small step towards that. So, you know, thank you very much.
Thank you. Alistair, would you like to add anything first? And then I'll come on to...
Just very brief opening comments, and I think I'd be delighted to hand over to Gregory and Kelly. It's just a really great example of maximising the use of space. The council has invested huge amounts of money to develop our schools, Bellenden School and Cherry Garden School. So to be able to meet the needs of more children and that they're met locally and they really make good use of really high quality education facilities that the council has invested in, I'm delighted that we can do that. To my left, Gregory.
Gregory.
So, I think there's two strands to this. So apart from the side of Cherry Gardens and expansion and meeting the needs of the pupils that exist in our communities, in Southwark, it's that what we've talked about earlier, the keeping education strong in Southwark. Bellenden was built as a two-form entry school, but it has never operated as a two-form entry school due to pupil numbers, which has had a negative impact on the financial stability of the school. So for officers and Southwark to work with us to think about funding, generating funding streams is really, really important. So this is keeping education strong in action, really. So it's a really positive thing. I also think it's really positive. It's aligning with Southwark's 2030 vision. And for us, as well as a school, building relationships with Cherry Gardens, the expertise of what goes on in that school will only be good for our children. So yeah, it's an incredibly positive thing, I
And I think similar to Highshore, we have incredible demand for our places at Cherry Garden, and this is a real opportunity how we can continue to meet that need within the Southwark area. It's a fantastic opportunity to work with a local mainstream school. It's a 10-minute walk from Cherry Garden main site. We're able to work in partnership. We have a very shared ethos. It's a fantastic use of resources and provisions. Both sets of children will really benefit. We've done lots of work in the background about what that will look like for both sets of children and also opportunities for staff. We've heard obviously about where schools are closing and actually the impact on staff, but actually what a great opportunity because we will be increasing our workforce. So actually an opportunity for other staff to potentially join. And it's just it's a really exciting opportunity for our whole school community and our families to be able to make sure that Southwark children with the most complex needs are able to be educated in their local area.
Thank you. Again, very, very compelling and fantastic to be able to make this, make these fantastic use of buildings that we have for the children of the borough, I suppose the most important thing to say. Are there any questions people have about this one? No, I mean, I'll ask the same question, not my ward anymore, but again, just how do you plan to make sure the wider community are aware of this change? You know, it's important that people understand that the school building that they walk past, what it's going to be for and how it's used.
Yeah. The local area, that was mainly positive, I think. I mean, I don't think there's going to be a huge impact for the local community in terms we're talking about 16 children. Yep. So the school is already there, it yep. operates, so I don't see much traction in that really. Okay.
Excellent. Well, any other questions people want to ask? No? In that case, can I say thank you very much for the work you're doing. Thank you very much for the work we've done to make sure we found the right use here. And can we approve the recommendations in this report? Agreed? Agreed. Thank you very much for attending today. So people will know, we've obviously observed, we've spent a lot of time on the first few items on the agenda here, particularly the school closures, rightly so, very delicate and important decisions, but that does mean I will be rattling through lots of things in the agenda to make sure we finish on time today, and we've got a large number of reports. I say this predominantly to cabinet members, so please be relatively short in your introductions so we can get through things. I'm going to start first with Helen with the homelessness strategy.
Thank you very much. And I'm going to invite officers and also external guests from St Mungo's and Home Finder also to come and speak to this item. I think everyone is aware that homelessness continues to be an escalating crisis, especially in London, which I think is responsible for around 50% of national homelessness. We've been talking earlier about the private rented sector in particular and the challenges that has been presenting in terms of affordability. And certainly we see that in the homelessness service because of the increasing number of evictions from the private rented sector and the inability of people to find accommodation, for example, when they leave home office institutions and accommodation. So it continues to put huge amounts of pressure on the council. As I've outlined in my forwards, an estimated £4 million being spent every day across London on temporary accommodation, 1 in 21 children across London estimated to be in TA at the moment, and certainly rough sleeping numbers across London have also continued to increase, whilst we saw a slight reduction here in Southwark, still very high numbers of people rough sleeping here in the borough. So it continues to be a very difficult and challenging context. This report originally came to Cabinet before we went out to statutory consultation, and there has been a really extensive process of engaging with partners. We've run a number of focus groups with people who've experienced the service themselves. And a lot of people have also responded to the online survey. So I want to thank everybody who's been part of that. And we also went to scrutiny, the Housing Scrutiny Commission twice on the strategy and action plan. The kind of meat of it hasn't changed significantly. We've outlined the kind of 3 important principles that underpin the strategy around being data-led, effective and timely and outcomes-focused, and 5 priorities that kind of organise our work and the associated action plan. A number of things just to highlight highlight from that action plan, we've confirmed the intention to initiate strategic roundtables with the sector twice a year that would be chaired by myself as Cabinet Member. We've also confirmed our intention to establish a temporary accommodation working group with people in the sector, drawing on some of the best practice which is out there from other authorities. We are also undertaking a significant review of the service, and particularly Bournemouth Road at the moment, with an intention of delivering an accessible homelessness prevention hub in that space that will involve co-location of services, again, really kind of focusing on the prevention piece, which we know is so essential. And we're also, on an ongoing basis, but kind of reviewing our supply of temporary accommodation, which, as people know, has become so costly, particularly with long-term providers trying to kind of flip over to nightly paid and charging huge amounts to local authorities. So we're really pleased we've got £11 million from the local authority housing funds for a programme of buybacks. We're working to continue with our, I think, really strong Housing First delivery programme. And we're also, again, kind of this is relevant given the context where we're sitting, also looking at bringing some of the properties on the Aylesbury estates back into use as temporary accommodation, those which are in the latter phases of the regeneration, so aren't expected, where we aren't expected to require vacant possession in the next few years. So really trying to kind of make the most of our housing stock. So those are some of the things just to highlight. It's obviously a very extensive document with lots of other kind of appendices, but I'll hand over maybe in the first instance to St Mungo's and to Home Finder, maybe just to talk about the work that they've been doing and the importance of partnership to really get the outcomes for people that we need to see. Thanks.
Thank you. So if you'd like to introduce yourself first, and then it would be wonderful to hear from you.
Hi all, I'm Eamon Edgerton. I manage the St Mungo's Spot team, which is the outreach team. We're commissioned to work with rough sleepers on the streets. We're a small team. If we're going out late night and early in the morning, if we're doing our job well, then you don't really know, you don't really see us. Hopefully people you've called about will one day just move on to something better. You know, it's a difficult job. We worked in partnership with the council for 20 plus years. Being a commissioned service, as an advocate service, and working with the council can be a difficult place to be because, you know, we can challenge and we don't, you know, we're a trusted partner who will speak the truth when it matters. And that doesn't make for an easy relationship at all times. We've done some fantastic work over the years with a very large number of people. We work with thousands of people on the streets. I think last quarter we were working with 270 people for a small team. That's nearly 200 were seen rough sleeping in Southwark. And by rough sleeping in Southwark, that is on the streets, in the parks, in bin sheds, police stations, cars, and sadly, skips and bins even. So, you know, quite serious stuff. We're delivering quite a lot with the council. We do partnership work with multiple agencies. You would expect us to be out with health, enforcement, lots and lots of different agencies. We're reaching some of the hardest to reach people, and that requires us to go. We try and take services to people. We've set up a day centre and a wellbeing hub that we run on a weekly basis. We have worked with Southwark to run the SWEP and change that over. So yeah, and quite a lot in terms of working with people with immigration issues and providing legal assistance to them, which is quite life-changing. You know, we can talk about what are, you know, statutory and legal requirements to meet people's needs, but actually we have a moral requirement to meet rough sleepers, and they don't always fit the criteria for housing options.
Thank you. Having been out with the team, and I know how complex it is actually, and the wide range of people you've got and the challenges of providing people with accommodation. But I think it's always important to say to residents across the borough and anyone who's listening that we do indeed have a team in Southwark who will go and visit people on the street wherever they happen to be. If you report them via StreetLink, the team will go out, try and find them, talk to them, and talk to them about the accommodation that's available for them. And I'm very glad we're funding that and working with you to do that. Yes.
Hi there, I'm Ninesh Mutha, I'm Chief Exec of Home Finder UK, and my colleague with me is Amal Burhabi, Case Manager, Senior Case Manager. So we work with Southwark and we work with officers who refer clients to us who are prepared to look further afield. Could be further afield in London, could be in the southeast, could be much further afield. So as long as there's that flexibility, then we will try and match them with permanent, affordable, secure accommodation. So let me just read you a couple of sentences. Thank you, Miss Dana. You made it happen. You listened to me. You found the place. You had patience and then helped me when I thought things were not going well. It was not for you. If it was not for you, I would still be sleeping on cardboard boxes in the park. You made such a difference in my life. Thank you so much. So that's a real case study from Southwark, and there are many more of those, and we hope that there'll be many more going forward. So we also do try and link people up to employment opportunities, training opportunities, and we have a partnership with philanthropic funders who will match fund whatever Southwark put in, so virtually double the funding, to provide more resources, to find properties, pay deposits, pay for furniture, bedding and so on. So it's all about relocation, relatively short distance or much longer distances. So we rehouse people in the northeast, in Hampshire, and it's voluntary. It's what they want and it's what they've chosen as a secure permanent option for them that takes them away from the misery that they've been facing recently. And I don't know if you want to say anything.
So yeah, we do a lot of work with Southwark Council. This year alone, we've had nearly 10 moves, housing a lot of homeless applicants or applicants in temporary accommodation. And we look forward to working closely with Southwark to house a lot more applicants in TA, applicants that are homeless, rough sleeping, of course. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Very, very good to hear, and thank you for the work you're doing. And again, I think important to say, as a council, our policy is that for all homeless families, we seek to house people close and in London. But of course, some people, for all sorts of reasons, want to live somewhere else, and it can be very difficult to find somewhere else further afield if you need to. And that's so that is the. It's great to have you working with those people who do want to move further afield. Helen.
Just to stress that's permanent move, so it's out of TA into permanent housing. So, but yes, obviously the placement policy is followed. I don't know if Jerome wants to add anything about the consultation and some of the highlights of the action plan.
So Jerome Duffy, Programme Policy and Change Manager within Housing Needs. So our consultation, as Councillor Dennis said, was very fulsome. So we had 3 months of over 30 events where we were meeting with 10 organisations, key partner organisations. We had 2 homelessness forums which had a focus topic on the strategy and the action plan that we were seeking to develop. So across the 5 priorities, really, the thrust of the action plan is to identify that we can only really make the biggest impact through partnership with key organisations and have a better understanding of our data, have a better understanding of the trends and the themes as to why people struggle in the borough, the types of accommodation that they're in, and to make sure that we reach them as early as possible. So one of the quite exciting things that we're looking at the moment is a lift dashboard. So we're able to identify, using data in our borough, to get an understanding clearly of the difficulties that people are in, and then being able to tailor our advice and support service to them at the earliest possible stage. So we're avoiding that 11th hour scenario. And then again, it speaks to the co-location piece that Councillor Dennis raised as well. And that's identifying opportunities where there are really good hubs already existing in the borough. So family hubs through our colleagues in children's social care. There are our social prescribers who we work very closely with as well, so in the health aspect as well. And public health have been really key in the development of this work to give us the data that we need and to also help with our reach.
Thank you very much. There's a huge amount in this strategy. It's very welcome. It's definitely needed. As you set out at the beginning, Helen, 1 in 21 children across our city living in temporary accommodation now is something that we must never accept as a society and as a community, and that's a thing we absolutely have to change. Of all of the different work we're doing on this, the number for Southwark is roughly the same. It's about 1 in 21 as well. I think one of the things that's really important to highlight, again, you said at the beginning, Helen, is the work in here to refresh and renew our own homelessness service, make it a service that you can fully walk into and receive a wide range of support from a growing number of partner organisations alongside the council there. So I really want to say thank you in advance for the work that's happening to make that change happen. Is there anything that people want to add or highlight? Sarah?
It's just a very quick question following Councillor Williams from what you just said about Bournemouth Road. Is there a timescale for it to reopen? I'm conscious it's such an integral part of the strategy and will really change how that homelessness prevention service is working. So it's just whether there is an update you could give at this point, even if roughly.
Candida Thompson, Director of Housing Needs and Support. Yes, there is a rough timescale to reopen the facility, I suppose, the building fully, so that we can do what we want to do, which is to have proper co-located services and have a walk-in for the public. We need to make some changes to the building, so we are making some changes to the building to make it more accessible and to allow us to sort of have more residents in and also to have partners in. And that at the moment is looking like December, hopefully, for completion of that. We're trying to do it as quickly as possible, and we are also looking at ways that we can provide more face-to-face services to people during that, which also includes kind of talking to partners, social care, health and so on, about co-locating in other services that they use so that we can get out into the community and see people.
We look forward to seeing that happen in December. Excellent. And I hope everyone will be helping make sure that happens. I'm going to look at the Chief Executive on that one. Because it's really fundamentally important, so thank you very much. I'm going to move us to the recommendations on this report. So we've got 2 recommendations there. Can we agree those? Agreed. Thank you very much. I'm going to restate again. Apologies, I had forgotten we had people coming to speak today, so again, I spent a little bit more time on that one, and thank you very much for coming. I really appreciate it, and more importantly, I appreciate the work you're doing for families and single people in our borough to help them find the home that they need. So thank you very much. Thank you for coming today. But I am going to rattle through everything else on the agenda now. Otherwise, we're not going to get out of here on time, okay? So, Helen, over to you for the Community Infrastructure Levy. Very, very positive report that you've got to present now.
Super, thanks. And Neil's coming up on this. So, yes, really quickly, this is a really positive report. We're making more investments from Strategic Community Infrastructure Levy, which is money raised from developers in the borough. And the report sets out 3 priorities for this round of Strategic Community Infrastructure Levy. So £1.25 million to fit out the Harold Moody Health Centre here on the Aylesbury. £1 million to support bus priority works, and that's money to hopefully lever in additional money from Transport for London, so that's our contribution to that bid. And then an additional £500,000 for the Southwark Pensioners Centre. So that is on top of money that has already been allocated, but to really get that project over the line and delivered. And that's broadly in line with the overall amounts that we've also provided for some of the other kind of community infrastructure projects as well. So really positive, really exciting to see SSIL being used to make a real difference to people's lives in the borough.
Completely agree. James.
Just one very quick update, just in terms of the bus priority bid, hopefully not stealing Councillor Cash's thunder, but the bid is due to be submitted by the end of June, and we will know in August. But clearly, indication match funding is really supportive of that proposal.
Yeah, I just wanted to add to that. So this is a really exciting bid that we're putting into Transport for London to transform our bus routes from north to south, from South Circular right up to London Bridge, through kind of some of our key neighbourhoods like Camberwell, like Walworth and like the Elephant and Castle. And if it goes ahead, this £1 million that we're putting here will unlock 10 million from TfL. So we really can't afford not to put this forward.
Couldn't agree more. And they would be silly not to give us the money. So I hope they will. I've had lots of conversations with them about how brilliant the offer is. And in all seriousness, I think there's some pioneering work going on there about how we were out with Will Norman the other day, walking around that area, the London Cycling Walking Commissioner, is that the full title? Yep. Looking at some of the work we're doing, and definitely we're doing some brilliant work up and down that route already. So the chance to do more will be fantastic. As will the investment in the Southwark Pensioner Centre, as will the investment in the Harold Moody Medical Centre. All good news. Can we agree them? Agreed. Excellent. Right, so we have covered items 10, 11, 12 and 13 and 14 earlier on in the meeting. So I'll take us next to the refresher of the Southwark procurement framework. And Steph, you're going to introduce that one for us.
Oh, and I'll be really quick. I was going to have a really big long speech about how procurement isn't boring and how it can really drive through some change for our residents. So the new Procurement Act has come out, and this gives us a really, really good chance to align our procurement framework with Southwark 2030. The new framework highlights how we'll do that, whilst also strengthening our commitment to, social value around London living wage, around trade union representation, making sure that we're not using blacklisted companies around that, and lots of whole other wealth of things. But it's also given us the opportunity to have a vision for our social value framework and ensuring that we really deliver for our residents, that procurement and contracting works for our residents and the council, and not just for our contractors around that. As a council, we spend over £650 million worth on external contracts and suppliers, and the framework for social value will just draw us out how we will get that value to deliver for our residents and help meet our Southwark 2030 commitments. I want to thank Elaine and for the procurement framework and Chloe for the social value framework, but also a big massive thanks to Councillor Batterton, who's worked really hard with me on the social value framework as well to get to where we are. So I'm hoping that once this is in place, we'll be able to manage our contracts in a much better way, be a lot more transparent about what we procure and what we get from it, but also really demonstrate some really good social value for our residents and our communities.
Thank you very much. Anything you would like to add? No? I hesitate to ask for any questions on this one, given time, but are there any questions on this one? No? Well, look, thank you very much for the work on it. I think we haven't got time to justice to it today, but procurement can sound very boring, but actually it's about how we spend people across this borough's money on getting the right things for them, and that makes a big difference. So I know this work will make a big difference. So thank you very much for the work on it to the team, and can we agree the recommendations? Agreed? Thank you very much. The next item, I think we're back to Helen, aren't we? Yes, for the Statement of Community Involvement and Development Consultation Charter Review and Updates. Helen.
Yeah, thank you very much. Again, Cabinet will remember that we proposed some minor changes to the Statement of Community Involvement and Development Consultation Charter. The SCI is a formal statutory document. The DCC is ours, and that's something that we've chosen to do as a local authority. It was just a minor consultation, as we only recently agreed these documents in 2022, but this was a review just to see how it was working and to see whether there were any kind of refinements that needed to be made. So there are a few things that are clarified here, particularly around the publication and sharing of the early engagement strategy and the content required through the fact-based audit, and also making sure that we're not putting onerous requirements on small council schemes, for example, that need to go ahead quickly. So a number of changes here. Again, it also did go to scrutiny as well, and there was some very helpful kind of comments from scrutiny that has helped us to refine the proposals. So I think that's everything. I hope that we can agree that this evening. I don't know if Charlotte wants to add any more.
Well, again, thank you very much for the work on this. I think obviously we've seen recently the government make some big announcements on changes to how planning should work nationally. One of my first questions to the team was, what does this mean for us? And they broadly said, well, that means everyone else has to do what we do in Southwark. So it has been great to see the step change actually we've had over recent years in making sure that people who are building particularly big schemes in the borough are very clearly required by the planning process to consult with our residents in a much more thorough way. And I think this update shows that we have been doing that and make some really helpful tweaks to the process. So that being the case, can we agree the recommendations here? Agreed. Agreed. Excellent. Thank you very much. So next we have a couple of responses to Scrutiny Commission reports. The first of those was from the Environment Scrutiny Commission and was on biodiversity. Portia, do you want to lead this discussion?
I just wanted to say thank you to the wonderful work that the team do on biodiversity. There's literally just under 2 people that work in that team, and they do all the extensive work that we've got in our parks, with our communities, on estates, in a lot of built-up areas. So I just wanted to highlight how important it is that we accept that the amount of work that Southwark has done by 2 people on the team, so thank you very much for that. And the work that they do, a lot of people do not see biodiversity as an aspect of good health outcomes, so it's important that we regard it as such. These recommendations, in principle, ask us to do one of two things. One, expand on the work that we are already doing in our parks and in areas that we've greened out, which are mostly surrounded by housing. And two is to ensure that we're working as one council. For example, the work that we do with Councillor Dennis's teams to ensure that our new developments adhere to a good amount of biodiversity commitments. Some of the work done here in Southwark and in cities generally to improve biodiversity is mostly done through regenerative practices. Tree planting in cities is one, and also the creation of habitats like stag beetle loggeries. So yeah, just fantastic, amazing work that we're doing, and I'm very happy that we're accepting these recommendations to expand on the work that we're doing leading on biodiversity here in London.
Thank you. Is there anything you'd like to add to this one? Aled.
Yes, Ali
You
Richards.
introduce yourself.
Ali Richards, Strategic Director of Environment, Sustainability and Leisure.
And can I say, I think this is probably your first cabinet meeting, isn't it? So welcome.
Yes.
Thank you. It's been great to have you join us. It's been great to have a director who's very much out and about around the borough, doing lots of walkabouts and looking at the things that that are great about Southwark and the things we need to improve too. So welcome.
Thank you very much. It's just to say the very well-informed recommendations from the Environment Scrutiny, and we have accepted or partially accepted every single one of them. Biodiversity is central to what we do. Testimony of that is a climate score, a national scorecard which came out today, which shows that Southwark now was third best nationally in terms of addressing climate change, and this is a large part to a huge intensification of the work in the biodiversity front, which increased by about 19%. So that's put us now as one of the leading councils in the UK in how we deal with climate change, and in particular how we intensify biodiversification in the area, in the borough.
Fantastic news. I saw the results out just before I came to this meeting, but I couldn't quite work out where we'd come. So third, brilliant, in the country, that's excellent. First next time. Any other questions, comments people would like to add on this one? No? Well, thank you very much. And again, I just want to say a huge thank you. I mean, it is actually, in this role, I get the privilege of going and seeing lots of the sites we're doing. And many of them, as a normal resident, you kind of wouldn't notice that they're there. But actually, there's incredible work right across the borough on biodiversity. And whether it's the beautiful park right out here, or whether some of the small sites we're doing with community groups or on council estates, it's a huge amount of work. And I think residents have really got stuck into it over the last few years, particularly since the pandemic. So thank you very much. And thank you, Portia, for your work on it, as well as everyone else. Okay, can we agree the recommendations in that report then? Agreed? Agreed. The next one is Sarah, so this is you responding again to a scrutiny report, and this one on the recommendations arising from the scrutiny of the Consort Estate major works. Sarah.
Thank you. I wasn't sure who was going to come up. Thanks, Clive. First of all, I just want to say that I think it is no surprise to us sitting around the table that we have had some really serious challenges with the delivery of major works projects over the past few years, and that the Overview and Scrutiny Committee has been looking in some detail at some of those issues and in partnership with residents of both the Consort Estate but also other estates across the borough. So I really want to thank both the residents of the Consort Estate and also the ward councillors for Rye Lane Ward for all of their work in terms of taking this to scrutiny. There's a simple point that it really shouldn't be necessary for tenants and leaseholders to have to go through the scrutiny process to be satisfied with the delivery of the major works project. It was timely that it came to overview and scrutiny because it was an early stage, unlike the other major works projects that we're looking at, which are much further down the line. So I am really pleased that through the work of officers that they managed to grapple with those issues quite quickly and worked in partnership with those leaseholders and tenants to be able to review the scope of the contract and actually look at the provisional costs and actually come to a much better place than where it was when they first went into the scrutiny process. The recommendations from the committee are more about what more we need to do in terms of major works projects going forward. Some of those things are already underway, so we are actually making sure that projects that are new to us in terms of major works are developed in a much a much stronger way with tenants and leaseholders, making sure that we use the resources that are available to us in terms of getting the views of ward councillors, of getting the views of tenants and residents associations. So I have confidence that we're going in the right direction. The recommendations, wherever possible, we're accepting them. There are some that are set out here which are difficult to do in terms of how leases are set up between leaseholders and freeholders. But in a number of cases, we're also looking at how we can possibly make some changes by lobbying the government so that we're in a better position with our leaseholders, particularly in terms of major work projects.
Thank you very much. Again, I think really important piece of work. My thanks to Scrutiny for having done this work, also to Ward Councillors, Jasmine Dobson is in the audience, Jasmine sat next to me, David as well. But I think really important that we have looked through the lessons from this, which is the most important thing, so we can make the changes for the future. And thank you, Sarah, to you as well for your work on making sure that has happened. Can I then ask us, unless there are any questions, I should double check. No? Can I and then get us to agree the recommendations in this report as well then? Can we agree those? Agreed. Thank you very much. Next we have two policy and resources reports from Steph. The first one of those is, we've got capital first? Yes, capital first. Yep.
Yes, so thank you, Chair. This report is the capital outturn, so where we ended up with our capital programme last year for 24-25. Just some key points. In the general fund, we had spent £98 million worth of funding on capital projects, including work for our Streets for People, in our parks, in our schools, and some of our climate emergency work, as well as some of the community infrastructure levy programmes that came on board around that, of which £60 million was funded through borrowing. I think it's really important to note that the borrowing sort of climate is a lot different to what it was back in 2022. Since the mini budget, it is more expensive to borrow, but we still managed to deliver on some really big capital projects that are really meaningful for our residents. In terms of the HRA, as you know, we've had issues around sort of being on the HRA and the finance of the HRA, and looking at how we can get back on an even track, not just on the revenue, but with the capital programme. We spent £203 million in the housing investment plan last year, of which £150 million was on our new build council homes, delivering much needed new council homes across the borough, and £66 million on asset management, which includes repairs, but some of those major work that are really vital to our estates that Sarah's mentioned previously. We have actually had a situation where the year before we were sort of borrowing about £192 million for our housing investment programme, because we took the decision to sell some of our larger homes, which have been void for some time. That's meant that's brought borrowing costs down to just £41 million for the last year, which means the money to service that debt has reduced around that as well. In terms of the Housing New Homes programme, obviously we're still pushing ahead with Tustin and Ledbury, and procurement is underway for the next phase, which is looking at development agreements with no council borrowing to retain and maintain the costs within that. There's one ask of Cabinet around an additional item for capital bids in this report, and the reason it's come here and not in the normal cycle of capital bids is because it's very time sensitive, and that's to consolidate Ivydale Primary School from 2 sites onto 1 site and then moving on to the Bellwood Road site. But that means there's work that needs to be done over the next few years, and it can only be done during school holidays. So we really need to agree that bid today to enable during this school holidays those works to start, and the school will be fully consolidated into 1 site from the start of 26-27. Without that, they wouldn't be able to do that. Yes, we do, yeah.
Do you have any questions on this report? Clive, was there anything you wanted to add? No? Just a couple of quick comments on the capital programme. So this evening we will be formally opening the Burgess Park Sports Centre just over here. A fantastic investment right in the middle of the borough, providing top-class pitches for people to do a whole range of sports, including wheelchair accessible pitches. So fantastic to have that. And I think the example you've given there, just there, Steph, of making sure that we can support a school down onto 1 site where they can be a sustainable school and also have extra provision for special needs on the 2nd site is another great example of using the capital programme, as well as the work we've done making sure we could secure the future Tower Bridge nursing home, which we've done also for the capital programme. Many more things, but they're not just abstract, they're about people's lives. So I'm very glad that we've been able to do those things, although points very much noted on the challenges of borrowing costs and other things in the current world we're in. So something for us to be very careful and frugal about into the future. Can we therefore agree the recommendations in that report? Agreed? which brings us back to Steph again for the revenue outturn report.
So this report is a revenue outturn for 24-25. Again, I'll go through the general fund and the HRA. I think this comes in the backdrop where we see across the country councils who are really struggling around their finances. In London alone, 7 councils have had to go to the government for emergency special funding to help balance their budget and books. We've always had a really prudent approach whilst being ambitious in Southwark. But this year, for the first time in a very long time, we've got an overspend which we haven't been able to balance throughout the financial year. So there's an overspend in the general fund of £16 million before the planned use of reserves and contingency. Once we used our reserves and contingency, that still left a £5.3 million overspend, which we're balancing via strategic risk reserves. We do have reserves in place for strategic risk to help support with that, but I think that just highlights how difficult it is becoming for councils across the country and how difficult it is in London now to set, balance the budget around that. The main driver of that, I don't think will be a surprise to anybody. It's largely temporary accommodation. We're £13 million overspent before reserves. Once we used the reserves, it's around £9.5 million that we were overspent on temporary accommodation. And we've heard from Helen with Homelessness strategy what the challenge is we see around that. Lots of landlords moving into nightly paid expensive accommodation. We're starting to see growing pressures in adults and education. Again, before reserves, that was £5.5 million. It has broken even, but we are seeing a higher demand on adult services and care packages, which is starting to add pressure onto that, around that. So this is the first year since I can remember we've not been able to fully mitigate those overspends around that. So we do need to make sure we continue to be financially prudent going forwards. We don't know what the outcome of the spending review will be. That's going out to consultation later this month, and local government finance reform, but we need to keep an eye on that as well, because things are getting tougher and tougher. We just need to make sure we live within our means whilst not dinting our ambition around that. The HRA, though, is a slightly different story. Now, obviously, we came last year talking about the housing revenue account and recovery plan to get the housing revenue account back on track, and that still stands. We're not out of the woods around that, but we're starting to see the sort of the impact of the decisions that we've made around the housing revenue account. So we actually ended up with a one-off underspend of just under £4 million, of £3.9 million around that. And it is a one-off event. Part of that is because you had a 53-week rent year. And on a 53-week rent year, we do get more rental income in that year. That brought in about an extra £5 million. We also actualised home ownership charges for the prior year with the actuals around the impact of energy pricing, building insurance and major works. And we also we had lower than expected interest costs on major works, as I said, on the capital programme, due to slightly reduced borrowing, down from £192 million to £41 million as well. That doesn't mean to say there are challenges still within housing and within the HRA. We still see tenants-facing services being quite overspent, and we need to make sure that they stay within their cash limit and looking at how we can bring that down to a more sustainable level. So whilst the headline on the HRA is good news, if you dig underneath, there are still challenges, and we need to make sure we don't take our foot off the brake in making sure that we're getting over the line in the first part of our housing revenue account recovery plan. And further good news, because I want to end on good news, is that Dedicated School Grant had an underspend of £1.1 million, enabling us to further reduce the deficit within the high needs block.
Thank you. Clive, anything you'd like to add?
Incredibly briefly, Chair, pleased to deliver a small underspend on the HRA that masks some incredibly hard work by members and officers collaboratively over the course of the last 12 months. You'll recall the discussions we've had over that. Work continues. General fund side of things are a bit more challenging. That's going to get increasingly challenging for London boroughs as we move forward for the next few years. Hard work starts now.
And thank you for setting that out for us. I want to say thank you very much to everyone who's worked so hard to get our housing revenue account into a better place. Still lots to do, but I think we were all very worried about just being able to reach the end of the year with a balanced books at the beginning of this year. I think we can be confident we can get there, but we need to make sure in other years we can do that for the long term. And obviously we've been doing that work nationally with the government to change some of the funding requirements around that, which are important too. But again, a really clear message for all of us about the challenges of local financing. We will continue, I'm sure, and my successor, whoever that might be, will continue the work of making sure we are loud about the need for funding for our community as well, because there is only so much we can do locally to balance the books. Ultimately, we've got to provide services for people, and they're not free to provide. So with those comments all made, can we agree the recommendations in that report? Agreed. Agreed, in particular. Excellent. So I'm going to go on to a couple of more procedural reports. So appointment to outside bodies. So it's a report that sets out all of the council's appointments. Can we agree the recommendations in that report?
Agreed.
Agreed.
Chair, just to say
Yeah.
there's one, they're all as set out, but there's just one contested position for the
Oh, is there?
self-funding
Sorry,
gallery,
apologies.
so
I totally
just
missed
need to
that.
vote on that one. Otherwise we'll-
Yes, sorry, I didn't read that note. Okay, right, so let's come back to the hold off on that agreement bit. So we do need to vote for South London Gallery Trustee Limited. We've received 4 nominations for 2 places.
Yeah, 3 nominations for 2 places.
Yes, I was going to say there's 3 here, but it says 4 there. But never mind.
That's
All right. So we have had 3 nominations. The nominations are Councillor Richard Leeming, Councillor Cleo Soanes, and Councillor Graham Neal. So I'm going to ask, I'm going to propose Councillor Leeming and Councillor Soanes. Can I ask who Cabinet members to vote on that one? Agreed? Unanimous. That's unanimous. So with that clarified, can we agree all the recommendations in the report? Agreed? Thank you very much. Okay, next item I have is nominations to panels, boards and forums. There are no contested positions in this one, so we can just agree the recommendations. Can we agree the recommendations? Agreed. We now have a series of reports which are receiving recommendations from scrutiny commissions. So for all of these reports, the Cabinet will have another report coming later in the year that will set out our response to each of them. But the first is from the Education and Local Economy Committee and is on special educational needs and disabilities provisions in the schools. Can we agree the recommendations in that report? Agreed. The second is also from Education and Local Economy Commission and is on Town Centre Action Plans, Youth Employment Support and East Street Traders. Can we agree the recommendation on that report? Agreed. The next is on the interim report of the Housing Community Safety Scrutiny and Engagement Committee on the review of tenant structures, draft resident involvement strategy. Can we agree the recommendations in that report? Agreed. And the final one is the report of the Health and Social Care Scrutiny Commission Nursing Care Home Delivery Scrutiny Review. I know we have the chair here for that. Esme, did you want to say anything on that one? Sorry, Suzanne. Sorry. Suzanne's the chair, yes. Suzanne, did you want to say something on that?
Good day, Cabinet members. Thank you for this opportunity to speak with you today and to present the findings of the Health and Social Care Scrutiny Commission review to the further delivery of a new nursing home care in Southwark. Let me begin by recognizing something important. This council is united in purpose. Both scrutiny and cabinet share the same ambition to deliver a high-quality, sustainable nursing home for the people of Southwark. The site identified on Asylum Road offers a strong opportunity. It's council-owned, central located, and strategically valuable. It presents a rare chance to deliver long-term benefit for our older residents and their families. The scrutiny review's recommendation that before any specific delivery model is chosen, the Council commission a Gateway Option 0 appraisal. This is a step only aligned with the Council procurement policies, but also with fairer future procurement framework. Most important, it ensures that all availability routes are properly assessed, transparent and fair. One of the key options scrutiny believes deserves serious consideration is direct council delivery. When it comes to managing public infrastructure, exploring in-house delivery could provide lasting value, consistency, quality, and suitable for residents, especially in a sector where continuity of care is critical. Scrutiny is aware that capital funding is tight. However, alternative funding routes may be available. This could include community infrastructure levels, Sector 106 contribution from nearby development, low interest loan through the Public Working Loan Board. This mechanism has helped finding new school public infrastructures and why not nursing home care, given the urge and growing need for our aging population. Scrutiny also encourages the Cabinet to look carefully at long-term revenues, implicating while some models may appear more affordable upfront, they could come with higher recruiting costs, especially if relying on private operators. There's also additional monitoring, cost and risk of quality drafts. A gateway or appraisal gives the Council the structure to weigh this trading off. Scrutiny also urged the Council to consider partnership options. Across the country, some councils have successfully partnered with the NHS Trust or charity organizations to deliver care homes, blending public outside, and especially experiencing an alternative funding. And finally, scrutiny review finds the ownership and operating model do matter. Council-run care homes often score higher in Care Quality Commission rating. This offers greater control, quicker investment where needed, and stronger assurance of service continuity compared to outsourced models of outright land sales. In conclusion, scrutiny respectfully propose that Cabinet moves forward with a gateway zero option appraisal and allows marketing testing to continue in parallel. This balanced approach will ensure that every feasibility delivery route, including in-house and partnership, is considered fully. Our shared goal is simple and vital: to build a care home that is safe, high quality, affordable, and built to last. Scrutiny hopes that this report supports Cabinet in making the best possible decision for older residents and their loved ones. I end with this piece of quote from myself. When the Council invests wisely in care, they don't build a home, they build dignity, stability, and a legacy of compassion for generations to come. A well-shared opportunity today becomes greater impact tomorrow. Thank you for the time and for your contribution on this leadership. Thank you.
Thank you very much for the report. As always is the case with things, you won't formally respond now. We received the report. The Cabinet's response comes back later in the year. You obviously made there are a number of recommendations in the report, but the one you've emphasised is the one. I just turned off there. Sorry, it's back on again. The options appraisal for a new care home, and you suggested a particular technical way of doing that. I'm sure, I actually won't be here for this, but I'm sure that there will be an options appraisal. Whether it's a Gateway Zero or something else, I think we'd have to come back to you on how that will happen, but I'm sure an options appraisal for the different options that provides that care home is something that we will look at doing. But thank you very much to everyone, and thank you for supporting today. Oh, Evelyn, sorry, did you want to say something? I'm afraid I'm not going to take any other comments because we have overrun as a meeting. But Evelyn, if you want to quickly say something as the lead cabinet member.
Yes, so I want to say a huge thank you for your presentation today. You may not believe it, but I do appreciate your input in this. I think it's really important. And I think you mentioned our shared ambition. It's something that we all, I think, want the most the perfect home in the borough. And obviously my department and myself have pushed and I've evidenced the need for a care home in the borough. So this is something that we all want to go ahead with. There's a couple of things, notwithstanding that the fact that we'll respond in autumn, a couple of things I do want to mention, and I think I'll leave the financial aspect to that department, and the issue of Gateway Zero, I think Helen will deal with that. But you talked about, working in partnership, for example, with another public body, the NHS, or a charity body. I think at the last scrutiny meeting, I did tell you that I have been trying to liaise and work with the NHS to see whether actually we can go in partnership, because for me that would have been an ideal position. I'm still in conversation with the NHS, and obviously when we do return a full response, I will add that information there. We are currently looking at the market-led approach, and this opens the door for any charitable organisation that wants to step forward to be able to say we want to go in partnership with you. So this approach does not preclude that position. One thing I will say is that, for me, and you mentioned in your report about high quality care, this has been one of my kind of fundamental aspect of my work, to make sure all our care homes are good or are standard. So we will definitely making sure that as we approach this, this is our focal point. But I think with regards to the Gateway Zero, I'll leave that for Helen to respond, and the financial situation, I'll leave that for Steph to respond. But I do appreciate, and your quote, I totally support your quote. I do appreciate your work in it, because I also want the best possible outcome in this process.
Go on, Helen, if you want to.
Well, I suppose I just wanted to kind of offer assurance that all delivery options have been fully appraised, including the direct delivery option, and I know that was set out in the information that was provided to Scrutiny Commission. The estimate would be around £25 to £30 million in terms of capital expenditure. With costs increasing, it could go higher than that, and obviously £16 million, as discussed, was already set aside in the capital programme, and a lot of it has been spent on Tower Bridge. So what we want to achieve is the best possible care outcome, as you said, for people in the borough, increasing the capacity. But, we've just had the capital outturn report as well, so very conscious and mindful of what is actually available to us in terms of capital expenditure. So those options have been appraised. Section 106, SIL, all of those things have been looked at. The amount of money that is being requested for direct delivery is significant. So obviously, we will fully respond in September, but I just wanted to assure everyone here and everyone listening that we have fully appraised the direct delivery option.
Thank you very much. I'm going to draw the discussion to a close there and close the meeting. Thank you very much for your report, and you'll receive your full response at a future Cabinet meeting, but also any decision about the route for providing a care home will provide within it details of that options appraisal for whichever option is recommended when it comes to that final report. Thank you very much.